this audience, I can't help but be so excited and so hopeful on the inside because these young men and women are getting ready to change the world. We are looking at and what we are celebrating today are educated men and women that have not only positioned themselves for a positive future, but they have began the journey towards becoming a leader that's going to change their community, their nation, and their world. And welcome again. It's so good to be with you today for this Social Justice Summit. I am super excited to be here with all of you. I am actually in South Florida right now, and that's the wonderful thing about being virtual is we can be in multiple locations and have a great time and connect. So first and foremost, I want to welcome you all to this keynote presentation. Super excited, not only to get to know each of you, but really to share some of the content from my leadership book with you today. Before I do get started, the first thing I do want to do is I want to just thank Jill and Kelly. Thank them so much, not only for helping me prepare for this program, but really just doing all they can to provide programming that can make an impact in your life. I know Mother Teresa once said that there's more, that people hunger more for appreciation and love than they do for bread. And really, I like to eat, and I'm talking more about that later, but the power of appreciation is so important. It's important that we honor and celebrate and appreciate those that go out of their way to make our lives better. So can we give a big round of applause to Jill and Kelly in the chat box? Can y'all just give them a big shout out? Just put your hands up, clap hands, whatever you want to do. Just let them know that you appreciate them and that you appreciate exactly what they are doing, because what they are doing is important work, and these events are so important and they're so awesome. So again, I'm super happy to be here today. Now, before we do get started, just a few things I want to make you aware of. Number one, we're here to interact and to engage. And so throughout this presentation, you're not just going to hear me talk. You're going to go into breakout rooms. There's going to be a couple of videos, and you're going to talk, because what I've discovered not only do we learn more when we engage, but I discovered that it's more fun when we interact with one another. One of the great things about summits and conferences is you get to meet people. And hopefully through this exchange and through these conversations, we'll be able to meet multiple people that are here today. Second thing is, if you can open your screen, that would be amazing. As you know, I'm in a room right now and I see different faces on different screens. So if I can see your face, that's always a wonderful thing, because I can see your wonderful smile, I can see your expression, and I can feel like I'm actually there with you. And the third thing, last but definitely most important, we're here to have fun. I believe learning is fun. I believe learning is enjoyable. I believe that we grow, we evolve. Obviously, we may be challenged. Obviously, there's some stuff that may make us think. But at the end of the day, we're here to have fun and enjoy each other. So just want to make sure that we're having fun as we engage in this conversation. So I want to begin the journey. So as many of you know, it was about 11 years ago when there was a major earthquake that transpired in the country of Haiti. And for many of you who may be aware of this, there were hundreds and thousands of people that were not only impacted, but there were people that lost their lives. And when this devastation happened in the country of Haiti, not only was there a group of people within our nation that came together, not only to provide resources, to provide encouragement, and do everything they could to help those that were in need, but there was a group of artists that came together to remake the song "We Are the World." Now, if you're like me and you're a little bit more older, you remember the early 80s. They used to have the whole song "We Are the World" with Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston and all the incredible singers. And it was an incredible song. But what's so fascinating about this experience is, in the midst of a challenge, these artists from different genres came together to do what I like to say the next generation remix of "We Are the World." And it was a really successful project because, number one, it raised awareness. Number two, it raised money. But more importantly, all of this was able to make an impact. People were inspired. People were made aware of what was going on. And it was an incredible project. It was an incredible act of people coming together to make a difference and to impact those that really needed assistance during this time. Now, as I sat there, I was really inspired by the song. I love the song. Matter of fact, I encourage you to check out the song. But when I looked at it from a leadership lens, or agent of change lens, or a DEI lens, there were a few things that really stood out to me. The first thing that stood out to me was that in order for this project to be done, it required effective leadership. Now, again, there's a variety of definitions when it comes to leadership, but I like to define leadership as an ability to influence. Again, that deals with persuade, motivate, inspire people to a certain destination. This is the vision, which I would say the clear, concise, compelling picture of your future to make an impact. So when I deal with leadership, leaders influence people to a certain destination, ultimately to make an impact. When I deal with leadership, leaders make others better. Leaders make organizations better. Leaders make our community, our nation, and our world a better place. Leadership is important. We'll talk more about that as we go through this program. The second thing that was really, really eye-opening is these were diverse groups of people. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware that when we deal with diversity, we deal with differences. When you look at this picture, you see different cultures, you see different genders, possibly different sexualities, different thoughts, just different genres of music. There's differences. So the people who put on this wonderful project not only were effective leaders, but they were able to galvanize, unite, and bring together diverse groups of people. The third thing that I want to share with you is they have what I call an inclusive lens of leadership. Now, again, there's so many things we can talk about when it comes to inclusive leadership, but one thing I want to make you aware of, when I deal with inclusive leadership, this is when people appreciate, they value, they respect, but more importantly, they give people a voice. They allow people to voice. They allow people to be authentic of who they are. They allow people to bring their true self to the specific project. And when you look at this particular project, not only did they have a song, but it was different genres of music. So you had hip hop, and you had pop, and you had soft rock, and you had gospel, and a collection of singers that were true to their genre in order to create this incredible event that made an impact in the world. And I believe with all of my heart, if we're going to be effective leaders of the 21st century, not only do we need to unite, collaborate, and bring diverse groups of people together, but we need to know how to do it with what I call an inclusive lens of leadership, where we listen, where we value, where we honor, where we give people a voice, give people a space to be authentically who they are. But it doesn't stop there. The next thing that I identified was there was collective impact. In essence, it took a lot of people coming together to make an impact. And when we deal with social justice, and we deal with making an impact, and we deal with making a difference in our communities, our nation, and our world, I have found it's not going to just be one person. It's going to be a collective group of people coming together to make an impact. The fifth thing that stood out to me is they understood their role. Now, this is important, especially when we deal with, being a social change agent or an activist. When you deal with these concepts, there's different roles. Everyone has a part to play. When I think about the situation in Haiti, there were several different people that were helping, but these singers understood their role. They understood that they cannot solve the entire problem, but they can be part of the solution to the problem. And I think that's important for us to understand when we deal with social justice, when we deal with positive change, when we deal with making an impact. We may not be able to do everything, but we are able to do something. So it's important to understand your role. And the last thing I want to say is opportunity. This created opportunity by these individuals doing their part to help those that were in need. To create an opportunity for education, opportunity for financial resources, opportunity for people to help or to give resources to what was in need. In essence, when we come together as agents of change, when we come together as leaders with what I call an inclusive lens of leadership, opportunity is created. Access is created. People have the opportunity to grow, to learn, but more importantly, get the things that they need in order to reach their fullest potential. So these were the set of things that I was able to identify in this story as it relates to what I'm talking about today. And the reason I shared this with you is because I believe with all of my heart, if we're going to be effective at making an impact in the world, if we're going to be effective at really creating positive change in our communities, our nation, and our world, not only is it important that we're effective at leading diverse groups of people with what I call an inclusive lens of leadership, but more importantly, we're going to have to identify a problem that we really care about. We're going to have to develop a solution to help eradicate that problem. But then more importantly, we're going to have to do the work individually and collectively. In essence, it's not enough just to do our part. It's about doing our part to help the whole bigger picture. And this is what I believe this story shows us. And this is what I believe is critically important for us to understand if we're going to be agents of change, if we're going to be more effective as leaders of diverse groups of people with what I call an inclusive lens of leadership. Now, the reason I shared this story with you, the reason why I wanted to share with you this point is because when I created Red Leadership, the purpose of this book was not just to write another book. But the reason I wrote Red Leadership is because, number one, I want to help leaders become more effective at retaining, engaging, and developing more culturally diverse leaders of the emerging generation. But even more importantly, the reason why I wrote the book is because, number one, I identified a problem. Within our nation right now, we have a problem when it comes to retention. We have a problem when it comes to developing more culturally diverse leaders. There's a lot of issues that are going on today, and I felt like this book could be part of the solution to the problem. Again, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it can be part of the solution where we can create more organizations, we can create more communities where not only do we see more diverse representation from the highest levels, but more importantly, we are creating organizations, we are creating cultures, and we are creating communities and places where people want to stay, where people can be retained, where people can be engaged, and ultimately people can be developed into leaders that ultimately, I believe, change organizations and change people's lives. This was one of the reasons why I wrote the book. And as we journey into this presentation and we begin to get deeper into this conversation, my goal today is to use some of the content from the book to provide you with 4 leadership strategies that I believe will not only enable you to be more effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, but even more importantly, it's going to provide you with some information, some strategies that will help you become what I call an agent of social change. In essence, I believe that these concepts will help you make an impact, whether it be in your organization, whether it be on your campus, whether it be in your community, your nation, or your world. Again, there's so much more to talk about. And so that's one of the challenges for me because there's so much information to talk about. But today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 concepts that I think align well with what I believe you all are destined to do, which is really just continue to create change, continue to make an impact, continue to make a difference, and ultimately create better communities, a better nation, a better world for everyone. And so that's going to be the purpose of our conversation today. So really quickly, if you can do me a favor in the chat box and give me a high five, or in front of your screen, give me a high five just so I know that you're with me. Give me a high five. And then on the side, if you can give your partners a high five on the side. I know they don't see you, but I always say give a high five on the side as well, just to let them know that you are ready to go. I am telling you, I'm excited. But before we get started, I'm going to share this video with you because this video is going to set up my first point. I searched hard to find a video for this first point, and this is the one that I came with, so I hope that you enjoy it. Here it goes.
You're nothing if you're not the truth. The biggest reward is not financial benefits, though it's really good. You can get a lot of great shoes. Nothing wrong with great shoes. But those of you who have a lot of shoes know that having great shoes and a closet full of shoes or cars or houses or square footage doesn't fill up your life. It doesn't. But living a life of substance can. Substance through your service, your offering of your whole self. And the baseline for how do you live a life of substance is whatever is the truth for you. What do you stand for? When I had finished my school, and I was so proud of myself for building this school in South Africa, and I went to Maya and I said, Maya, that's going to be my greatest legacy, the school. And Maya said, you have no idea what your legacy will be. I go, I know that, but I really do think that the school's gonna, be my greatest legacy. And you have no idea. So I go, yes, ma'am. She said this, and I leave this with everybody in the room, graduates, friends of graduates, family. She said, your legacy is every life you've touched. Your legacy is every life you've touched. Feel everything with love, because every moment you are building your legacy.
Right? Legacy. The reason why I shared that video with you is because it leads me into my first point. And I think it's really important for us to think in these terms when it comes to social change. And it's what type of legacy do you plan to create? I want to start here when we deal with social change, because I think at the end of the day, what makes leaders exceptionally amazing is they're not just concerned about their generation, they're concerned about future generations. In essence, sometimes when we're creating social change, sometimes when we're making an impact, we may not never see the outcome of what we're working for, because it may take more years than we have the time to do the work. I was having a conversation, or I was watching a video with a woman from Netflix. Her name was Verna Myers. And Verna Myers is really known in the DEI space. And they were talking about equity. And they talked about the evolution of diversity. So we talked about multicultural, then we talked about diversity, then we talked about inclusion, and we talked about a sense of belonging. And now we're having this conversation about equity. And one of the things she said that was so powerful is she said, it's going to take us at least 95 years to actually see the full manifestation of equity the way it needs to be. I want that to sink in for me. She said 95 years. Listen, I'm about 40 plus years of age. I don't know if I'm going to be here when I'm 130 years old. So that means that if I'm working towards creating more equity within our culture, within our society, that means that I'm pursuing something that I may not never experience in my lifetime. Oh, it's getting good now. But isn't this what social change is about? Isn't this what making an impact is about? Isn't this what social justice is about? It's about building something for future generations that you may never experience. And so it leads me to my first point. My first point is this: what type of legacy do you plan to create? In essence, when we deal with this concept of legacy, because it doesn't just deal with creating things. Maybe it's a value. Maybe it's a strategy. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it's mentoring someone. Maybe the legacy is in your household and helping your kids see things that you didn't see when you were younger. I don't know what your legacy is, but what I do know is this: that when we create legacy, we identify a problem and we develop a solution to that problem that will ultimately impact others beyond our time. And I think when we have this conversation about social justice and we have this conversation about being an agent of change, we got to start from what I call a legacy mindset, because true change is not really even about us, it's about others. And so every day we go to work, every day we pursue something, it's important for us always to have the mindset: who are we doing this for? And what steps do I need to do to set up the next generation to take it to the next level? This is really important when we deal with social justice, we deal with being an agent of change. So the first question I want to know is, what is your legacy? What is it that you desire to do that's going to impact future generations? That's the first question I want to ask you, because you want to be very clear of what you're doing. You want to be very clear of what you plan to establish. But more importantly, you want to have a vision, or at least a picture of the change you wish to create. And again, when I do a vision, it's a clear, concise, captivating picture of your future. So when we deal with social justice, when we deal with being an agent of change, when we deal with effective leadership, my question is, what do you see in the future? What is it that you see? What do you see yourself creating? What do you see yourself leaving for future generations? Because I love what Kerry Fleck says. He says, and I quote, said, vision drives the leadership legacy. Provides the roadmap, the guide, the tools, and make sure we're focused and stay on the right track. So here's my question: when you look at your life and you think about values and you think about structure and you think about creating things and you think about lessons and you think about mentorship and you think about providing more access. My question is, what is your legacy? Have you painted a picture of what your legacy is? Because when I think about these three leaders, not only do I think about leaders of positive change, but I think about leaders that have made a positive impact that impacted future generations. When I think about Clara Barton, the founder of the America Red Cross, today people are still being impacted by the American Red Cross. In essence, this wonderful leader saw a problem and created something that not only impacted their generation, but impacted future generations as well. When I look at the next picture, I see Shirley Chisholm. And Shirley Chisholm did a lot for Black women in this world. But one of the things that stands out to me as an African-American male is one of her quotes where she talks about our purpose here on earth is to serve. And I'm paraphrasing the quote right now, but it's a powerful statement because it reminds me that everything that I do is to serve and to make an impact. It reminds me that every day I wake up, every day that I breathe, every day that I do anything, I'm here to serve and make an impact. And those are powerful words of wisdom. Those are leadership truths that not only have worked for me, but I can share with other people. And then I think about Gandhi, and I think about not only what he did, but I think about his words where he said, be the change you wish to see in the world, but also his ability to manifest this nonviolent protest, this nonviolent movement that Dr. King used as well. This is one of the things that Gandhi taught us. It wasn't just words, it wasn't just his life, but there were specific strategies that we can use today to create the change we wish to see in the world. And to me, this is legacy. So in essence, when I'm asking you the question, what is your legacy? Ultimately, what I'm asking you is, what are you going to leave that's going to impact future generations? Because before we get into strategy, before we get into other leadership skill sets and qualities, the first thing we got to do is we got to establish the foundation. And we got to be very clear about what we are creating and what we are envisioning and what we see in the future. You know, there was an article that I read in the Harvard Business Review, and I thought it was really eye-opening. It said that the most powerful thing that anyone can ever do in their career is create a legacy that has a lasting impact on the future. They said the most powerful thing, more than money, more than status, more than title, more than position, the greatest thing we can do is create a legacy. Oh, I'm feeling inspired today, y'all. I get a little inspired. I get pumped up. I know I start moving around because I'm sitting here and I'm saying this to you and I'm just looking at the screen and I'm just thinking there's so much legacy here on the conversation today. There's so much greatness here on the conversation today. There's people that are here right now that have ideas, have solutions, have strategies, have values, have words of wisdom that are going to impact generations. When people ask me the question, are you concerned about the future? Absolutely not. Because I know there's some people here that are going to make a difference that's going to help the future generations continue to move forward and make our world a better place. Now, you may be asking the question, well, Dr. J, you don't understand. You see what's going on in the news. You see what's going on in society. It's crazy out here. I know. But if I was to talk to your great, and great grandparents, there was some stuff they went through and they overcame. There was some stuff they did to give us the opportunity that we have today. So no matter what we're facing right now, no matter how much doom and gloom that the news may show us on a daily basis, understand that we have the power to rise because in you is a solution to a problem in the world. I never forget one of a speaker that I look up to by the name of Noel Jones said, I quote, he said, every time a child is born, a solution is brought into the world. And in this conversation, there are solutions, there are answers, there are legacy, there are visions that we can create not only for the present, but for future generations to follow. But I believe it begins by asking ourselves a simple question: what type of legacy do we desire to create? And from an application process, because there's always a how person within my audience, how do I do that? Number one, what problem do you want to solve? One of my good friends, Joe Washington, once said, he said, the thing that irritates you most is the thing you're called to solve. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But what problem are you passionate about? Number two, how can you help? How can you solve the problem? What are some specific things that you can do on a daily basis that will help you to eradicate this problem? The third thing is, when this problem is solved, what do you visualize? What will our community look like? What will our nation look like? And what will our world look like? And then the last thing, you got to act courageously. You got to stand up and go for it. You got to tell fear. You got to tell doubt. You got to tell naysayers, all the people that are going to try to tell you that it cannot happen. There's no way we're going to solve this problem. It's the worst ever. You got to stand up with courage and say, no, I have an answer. You got to stand up like Dr. King. He said, I have a dream. There is a dream. There is a vision. There is an answer. But the world is waiting for you to identify, to rise up, and have the courage to begin to do the work that is necessary in order to create the change that many of us wish to see in our communities, our nation, and our world. The first point is, what type of legacy do you wish to create? And as I talk about this point, before we go into our breakout, because I want to hear what your legacy is, I had the opportunity to go to a healthcare conference last week, and I sat on a panel to talk more about the Great Resignation and talk about talent shortages and a variety of other things. But there was a guy that was on my panel, and he was from the country of Ecuador. He shared with me that his family came over here with just $5. Let that sink in a moment. They came to this country with $5. But the father didn't just come to this country with $5. He had a vision. And his vision was not only to have a business, not only to help his family have a better future, but his vision was to instill into his kids a legacy that would enable them to go farther than him. As I'm sitting there talking to this individual and just amazed that someone came to this country with $5. And not only did they have a successful business, not only did they have a flourishing family, but more importantly, they planted something this young individual that was working for this company. And now he's the global of talent acquisition for a major company in the country where he came from. I sat there and I said, this is legacy. A man came with $5, but had a legacy, had a vision, and did his part so that his son can not only carry out the legacy, but can even do more for future generations. My question to you today is, what is your legacy? What do you see yourself doing to make a lasting impact? Before we go into the second point, I'm going to share with you another video. So here it goes.
Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. My soul is not contained within the limits of my body. My body is contained within the limitlessness of my soul. I've often said that I wished people could realize all their dreams and wealth and fame, and so that they could see that it's not where you're going to find your sense of completion. We're not the avatars we create. We're not the pictures on the film stock. We are the light that shines through. All else is just smoke and mirrors, distracting, but not truly compelling. Our eyes are not viewers, they're also projectors that are running a second story over the picture that we see in front of us all the time. Fear is writing that script. Fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying that you can ask the universe for it. I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Because everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart. Take a chance on faith. Not religion, but faith. Not hope, but faith. I don't believe in hope. Hope is a beggar. Hope walks through the fire and faith leaps over it. You are ready and able to do beautiful things in this world. And after you walk through those doors today, you will only ever have two choices: love or fear. Choose love, and don't ever let fear turn you against your playful heart.
We can't hear the sound.
Yeah. Oh, you can't hear me?
Now
You hear me now? You
Yes.
hear me now?
See
Okay,
now.
okay. The reason I shared that video with you again is because not only does it share, a lot of great points, but more importantly, at the end, it talked about the concept I want to talk about now. It talked about choosing love. And I think if we're going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, and we're going to be leaders of change, and we're going to really make an impact, I believe we've got to ask ourselves the question, can you lead with courageous love? Now, again, when I deal with love, love in my definition is an ability to do good despite how you feel. So when I deal with love, love says I'm going to forgive, I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to make sacrifice, I'm going to extra mile despite how I feel, here it comes, and also how someone treats me. This is courageous love. And I believe if we're going to truly make an impact in the world, we need to be grounded in this concept of courageous love, in this concept that in everything I do, not only do I have courage, but I also do it with love. And the reason why this is so important, because I have discovered that love helps us build trust. I've discovered that love helps us to be more impactful at connecting with people. I have found that love enables us to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic. I have found that love is one of the keys not only to effective leadership, but also making an impact in the lives of others. But I've also found that if I'm going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, and I'm going to be an agent of change, then I got to be able to lead with courageous love. I got to be able to love and love people despite whether we agree or not. I got to be able to love people when I got to have those tough conversations. I got to be able to love people when maybe they may do certain things that may rub me the wrong way. I got to be able to walk in this love no matter how great the challenge is, because at the end of the day, I believe with all of my heart that not only does love overcome fear, but I believe that love always wins. And it's so important when we deal with social justice work. It's so important when we deal with leadership. It's so important when we deal with becoming more effective leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, that we understand this concept not only just of love, but this concept of courageous love. It was Mother Teresa, as I shared with you earlier, that said, and I quote, she said, "There's more hunger in the world for appreciation and love than for bread." And if you're like me, I love to eat. Matter of fact, I mean right after this, by the way, but I love to eat. But she says people hunger for appreciation, to be recognized, to be valued, here it comes, and to be loved. I love what John Maxwell says. He says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Again, love. I love what Bell Hooks says. Bell Hooks says, the moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. Again, the power of love. And then my good friend, Dr. Cornel West, I love this quote. He says, you can't lead the people if you don't love the people, and you can't save the people if you don't serve the people. Each of these people are impactful leaders. They're making a difference, or they made a difference in the world. But again, not only did they leave a legacy, but each of them was grounded and understood the power of love. And so I'm going to encourage you, as we deal with leadership, as we deal with being an agent of change, as we deal with social justice, is, are you grounded in love? Because love makes the difference. Now, again, Dr. J, how do I integrate this into my experience? Well, number one, commit to leading with courageous love. Begin to ask yourself, what is courageous love? What does that look like? And then begin to make the commitment. I'm going to commit myself to loving. I'm going to commit myself to being empathetic. I'm going to commit myself to being compassionate. Oh, so important. I'm going to commit myself to being forgiving. I'm going to commit myself to being patient. I'm going to commit myself to being kind when I don't feel like being kind. Some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to begin to develop intentional ways. How can I love people? How can I appreciate people? How can I value people? How can I honor people? How can I do that on a daily basis? Man, this is a game changer. And then I'm going to integrate into my leadership. In essence, I'm going to be so full of love that when people see me, they're going to see love. They're going to see love in my conversation. They're going to see love in my behavior. They're going to see love when I'm leading from a C-suite position. No matter where I'm at, they're going to see love. Oh, I get so excited. And then I'm going to reward others that love courageously. I'm going to reward the others that stand up and advocate for those that can't advocate for themselves. I'm going to stand up for those that are willing to speak the truth when maybe the truth should not, people don't want them to speak the truth. I'm going to stand up to those that are going to have the courage and the love to tell you the truth, to keep you accountable, to engage in that conversation, not because I want to put you down, not because I want to judge you, but because I love you enough to tell you the truth. These are the kind of people we got to reward. This is what is, I believe, is important. We do a social justice leadership and leading diverse groups of people, inclusive leadership. It's being grounded in love. I want to share a story with you. It was literally about 10 years ago when I came to South Florida, and I went to a church in South Florida. It's called Trinity Church, and I was going to a church, and I was here on a speaking engagement, and I was expecting to hear the pastor of the church to speak, and all of a sudden, this lady walked out from Africa. And she walks on the stage and fired up. I mean, you think I'm loud because y'all like, you're loud. I mean, you think I'm loud. I mean, she was like on a whole nother level. I'm very energetic. She was just talking and just, I was like, yeah. And she was just doing incredible work. I was just inspired. Like, this is amazing. In the middle of a conversation, she said, you know what? Several years ago, I used to live in Canada, and me and my husband felt inspired to move to Rwanda, Africa. And she said, Rwanda, Africa was considered the second most dangerous place in the world at that time. But we felt that we had the purpose and the call to go there and just to serve and just to make an impact. And she said they left everything in Canada and they went to Rwanda, Africa. She said when they were in Rwanda, Africa, they started building, they started helping, they started serving the community. And one day someone broke into their place and they tied them up with barbed wire. And then they said, give us your money. And I'm sitting there in the seats, and she's like, we said, we don't have no money. And they said, if you don't give us your money, we're going to blow their heads off. And she was like, I'm in tears and I'm crying. And she said, all this is going through my mind. And I'm just imagining, I'm sitting there like, I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, they broke in the house, they got the gun. Like, okay, this is crazy. God, please let me never be in that situation. I mean, I'm thinking about all this stuff right now. And they asked the question one more time and said, give us your money. And she says, I don't have any money. And tears are balling down her eyes. She says, they pulled the trigger, but nothing comes out. Can you believe that? Nothing came out. They freaked out. They left the building. She said her and her husband get off the barbed wires and they stand up and they survive. But now she had an important decision to make. Here it comes. She had a decision, do I stay or do I go home? She decided to stay. And because she stayed, not only does she have an orphan of 2,500 children that lost their parents, but her ministry is 20,000 per week. She began to talk about from the stage. At this point, no tears, and I'm like, this is amazing. And you're just sitting there like, man, this is an incredible story. And then it got a little bit more powerful because she said a guy asked her a question and said, why did you stay? And she said, the reason I stayed is because my love for this purpose and these people was greater than my life. When she said that, I'm like, whoo! I was like, this is powerful. The love for purpose and the people that she felt called to serve was greater than death, fear that tried to stand in the way. Ain't this what social change is about? Ain't this what impact is about? Have you ever just looked on television and thought about all these leaders that make an impact, all these people that made a difference, and you learn about the conditions? I mean, just think about the people in Ukraine right now. Just think about all the other people that have done the things they did. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but in Texas, when that mother said, "I don't care if there's a shooter here, I'm gonna jump over the fence, I'm gonna go get my kids, and I'm gonna walk out." That's some serious love that says, I don't care what I'm going through, I don't care what's in the way, I'm going to march on, I'm going to step on because of love. The challenge is, are we truly grounded in love? Do we have the right definition of love? I'm going to leave you with this. Do we really trust that love overcomes all? These are some questions you got to consider. These are things you got to think about, because I believe this is critically important as it relates to social justice, as it relates to leading diverse groups of people with what I call an inclusive lens of leadership. I'm going to move on to my third point. I have about 15 minutes. But my third point, the reason I share that with you, because it leads me to my next point. And my next point is, are you culturally intelligent? The reason I asked that question is because through conversation, we got to learn different things. We got to build our cultural intelligence. Now, again, what is cultural intelligence? Cultural intelligence is an ability to develop your competence as it relates to cultural understanding. And in order to do that, number one, I tell people we have to step out our comfort zone. We have to get out of our boxes. We have to engage with people that are different from us. Number two, we got to be curious learners. You want to engage, ask questions, get to know people, really get to figure out who they are. Number three, we got to be active listeners. You got to be an active listener. You got to be locked in. You got to be listening. Number four, you got to seek to understand. I was having a conversation with Kelly earlier about farming, and she knows I want to talk more about it. But I really want to know more about that, more about farming, more about that whole industry, people that do that. I want to seek to know more. And then the last thing is we got to be willing to make the changes that are necessary to create the positive relationships. Now, this is where it gets tough. Because if we're going to be effectively leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, and if we're going to be agents of social change as leaders, not only do we got to develop our cultural intelligence, but we got to be willing to make the adjustments that are necessary in order to create collective opportunity or spaces for everyone. Sometimes we may have to change the way we present. Sometimes we may have to change the way in which we do things. Sometimes we have to make maybe uncomfortable so for others to be comfortable. But this is part of the process of leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership. This is part of the process of ultimately becoming agents of social change. And the reason why this is so important, because number one, the more culturally intelligent I am, the less likely I will say and do things that offend people or cause people to have what I call microaggressions, when we do and say things without knowing that the person is impacted. But more importantly, when I have cultural intelligence, I'm able to build trust. I'm able to understand. I'm able to lead more effectively. I'm able to make a greater impact. And lastly, we're able to collectively come together based on our understanding of each other in order to make a greater impact. It's one of the reasons I love this quote here on Mind Tools. They said, building cultural intelligence can be the difference between success and failure, and the difference between solving problems and creating them. Isn't it amazing if we were to take a survey of our nation today, how many problems, challenges, and failure we have because of a lack of cultural intelligence, because of a lack of cultural competence, because of a lack of just effective communication. In essence, I just believe with all of my heart, the more we develop cultural intelligence, the more we develop cultural competence, the more we understand each other, the more problems we'll solve, and the more success we'll have as leaders. And I'm going to share with you a study that was really eye-opening to me. And there's a lot I can share, but I'm going to share this one with you. If you're not familiar with SHRM, SHRM is the top HR association really in the world. And they took a survey after the George Floyd situation. And only 13% of white HR professionals stated that they believe that discrimination based on race or ethnicity existed in the workplace. So I want you to hear this real quick. After George Floyd, all these stories, according to this questionnaire or survey, only 13% believe that there was racial discrimination in the workplace. Let's sink in for a moment. Another study by Pew Research says 81% of Blacks with some college experience stated that they experienced some form of racial discrimination. So you have a huge group that believe there's racial discrimination, and you have another group that says, I don't believe it exists. So ultimately, what we have is we're going to have challenges. We're going to have a lack of empathy. We're going to have a lack of understanding. And quite frankly, there's certain changes that may not be made based on our belief system. Going a step farther, it's one of the reasons why Harvard says, if you're going to be an effective, inclusive leader, not only is it important that you're committed, humble, and aware of biases, but you must be a curious learner. Here comes the word, culturally intelligent and collaborative. I hope you see what I'm saying. If I'm going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, then I got to be culturally intelligent, because if I'm not having conversations, if I'm not getting to know everyone, if I'm not stepping out my comfort zone, if I'm not developing deeper understanding, there's certain issues that may be affecting not only my leadership, our organization's productivity, but ultimately the change that I wish to see, whether it be in my community, my nation, or my world. So now the question comes, okay, Josh, Dr. J, you just showed this to us. What's the solution? Here we come. We got to increase our cultural intelligence. How do I do that? Number one, I got to step out of my comfort zone. I got to step out. Step out, fly, fly. Number two, I got to appreciate everyone no matter who they are. Man, I could talk more about that. Number three, I got to be a curious learner. Learn, get to know people. I mean, if I'm going to be serving a certain community, I got to understand that community. This is a whole nother discussion. So many times we're in leadership positions and we have responsibility to serve people that we really have no idea about. If I'm going to serve you effectively, I got to get to know you. I got to seek out to develop a deeper understanding. I got to be an active listener, and then I got to be willing to be adaptable, flexible, and willing to make modifications in certain moments to create a positive relationship. Now, in certain moments, you're not going to be able to make an adjustment. I understand that. There's certain values you're not going to change. They're non-negotiables. It's what it is. But we can strive to do everything we can to make the adjustments that are necessary in order to create positive cross-cultural relationships. And one of the things I'll share with you, and I'm going to move on to my last point really quickly because I don't have about 10 minutes, but one of the things I will share with you is I'll never forget when I started speaking, pronouns were not a big thing. You know, you didn't have to be aware of pronouns. But as I've evolved as a speaker, pronouns have become more important. Now, as a speaker, I'm going to have to change the way I address people, because now the language that I use, sometimes I gotta change my language, because someone that I may assume a certain way may not identify themselves as that. And if I say a certain thing, they're going to become offended. Now, if I'm going to be effective, if I'm going to be impactful, if I'm going to be an agent of change, if I'm going to be impactful, then I'm going to have to modify. I'm going to have to be aware. I'm going to have to learn and know how to navigate that space so that I can impact the person. Is it going to be uncomfortable? Yeah, because I've been doing something for like 10 plus years. And sometimes I may make a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. But again, these are the modifications. These are the things that I had to change as a speaker so that I could be more effective. I can reach people and ultimately not have people become offended because of the things that I said without me even knowing. Again, this is for my work, but we all have work that we need to do. And when we make these modifications, when we make these changes, when we develop this intelligence, we can be that much more effective, not only at leading diverse groups of people with inclusive lens of leadership, but ultimately becoming what I like to call an agent of social change. I was going to do a breakout. Can't do it. I got about 9 minutes left. And so I'm going to share with you this video. And after this video, I'm going to move into my last point. Here it goes.
You're the leader. It's on you. You didn't pick leadership. It picked you. You're called for this. Break out of your shell. You have what it takes. You were born with it. It's in you. A seed. Water it. Embrace it. Invest in your success. Study leadership. Read books. Watch videos. Listen to podcasts. Create your leadership brand. Then live that brand every day. Make a massively positive impact on your team. Love your team. Pour into your team. Lead them. They don't want a manager, they want a leader. a heroic figure, a role model. Be that. Build a championship team. See the potential in every person. Pull it out of them. Coach them. Inspire them. Teach them. Demand excellence from them. And all along the way, be the example. You set the tone. You cast the vision. You bring the attitude, effort, and energy. So start moving. No regrets. They will follow you. Make the culture your #1 priority. It's your performance environment. It's what provides the energy and passion needed to fulfill your plan and achieve your mission, to make your vision a reality. If you invest in the culture, the performance will follow. Championship leaders build championship teams that drive championship performance. Focus on the culture and execution of your team in order to capture the dream. You're the leader. It's on you.
The reason I shared that video, because it leads me to my last point. And my last point is going to really focus not just on leadership, but being aware of implementing the right leadership styles and qualities to produce positive results. You know, one of the things that I've been doing is I've been studying leadership for several years, literally probably about 15 to 20 plus years. And throughout this journey, I've learned about a variety of different skills, styles, and concepts as it relates to leadership. And one of the things that I've discovered is that if I'm going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, and if I'm going to be effective at truly making an impact as an agent of positive change, then not only do I got to be aware of the right leadership skills, but I got to know which skills to implement in order to experience positive impact. And this is so vitally important, because what I've discovered in my journey is I've discovered that not only is it important to have a variety of leadership skills and styles in order to experience maximum results, but I've discovered that leadership affects people, affects retention, affects engagement, affects development, affects well-being, affects culture. Leadership affects everything. And if we're truly going to be agents of positive change, and we're truly going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, then we got to understand not only what qualities of leaders is important as it relates to inclusive leadership and being agents of social change, but we got to understand how to implement them into our leadership style. You know, there's another quote that I like to share from Harvard University, and they said, and I quote, they said that 80% of people in this study stated that effective leadership not only affects the state of a community, but it affects the state of a nation as well. And I love this because, again, it's letting us know the importance and the power of leadership. In essence, it reminds us that leadership affects culture. And if we had more time, I would talk about how culture affects so much. Leadership affects behavior, and behavior affects so much more. Leadership affects the vision, the mission, the values, and the policies of an organization or a system, and that impacts so much more. Leadership affects motivation, inspiration, performance, as I said earlier, growth, accountability, even workplace politics. It's all impacted by leadership. So if I'm going to be effective at leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, and I'm going to be an agent of positive change, I got to understand not only what leadership skills are available to me, but I got to understand which ones can I develop and implement that are going to enable me to produce positive results. And in my journey towards my doctoral degree, this was my dissertation. My dissertation was, does the transformational leadership style have an impact on the retention of virtual millennial volunteers? I wanted to know, does a certain style of leadership affect retention? That's what I want to know. Part of the concept of my book. And what I discovered that not only does transformational leadership have a direct impact on retention, engagement, performance, leadership development, and well-being, but I discovered that servant leadership and inclusive leadership is just as powerful. And what I realized is if I'm going to help people become more effective at being more inclusive as a leader, if I'm going to help people become more effective at increasing retention and engagement and productivity and helping people to grow and evolve into future leaders of our communities, our nation, our world, then not only am I going to have to be aware of these styles, but I'm going to have to be aware of the qualities that are defined in these styles of leadership that I can integrate to my team. So again, when we do a transformational leadership, do you have a vision? Do you have passion? Are you open-minded? Do you have character? Can you be trusted? Do you care about people? Do you have a desire to transform the lives of people? Are you open to new ideas? Are you an effective communicator? Do you inspire? These are qualities of transformational leadership that we need to develop if we're going to be effective, not only at transforming people and transforming organizations, but ultimately leading diverse groups of people with an inclusive lens of leadership, as well as being agents of positive change. This is what I learned in my dissertation. This is what was the foundation of my writing the book, is because I wanted to help people not only become more effective leaders, but understand that your style of leadership, your characteristics of leadership, and your traits of leadership can have a direct impact, not only on your impact of others, but your impact on the organization as well. And so as we conclude with this topic, here's some things you can do to develop what I like to say the right leadership styles. Number one, identify the styles and qualities of leadership that impact you as an inclusive leader, that impact retention, that impact social justice, that impact social change. Number two, determine what qualities you need to work on, because leadership is a continuous growing process. Number three, begin developing those leadership skills. What are you going to do to develop those skills? How are you going to integrate them? And how are you going to measure whether or not you're growing in that skill set or not? Now, again, as I shared with you, I've had 15 years of leadership. And just last December, I had a transformational experience. I became certified as an emotionally intelligent leadership coach. And in this process, you have to take this assessment. And in this assessment, you have this coach who's already certified, and they begin to have a conversation with you. And when I looked through my assessment, I was able to identify that I was very assertive. I'm a very assertive person, cannot tell, but I was very assertive. What I discovered is from an empathetic standpoint, it was a little lower. Not to say I didn't care about people, not to say I wasn't compassionate, but because I'm so assertive, because I want to get things done, sometimes I don't take the time to really connect with people like I should. And I remember in the middle of this conversation, we're talking about being more empathetic as a leader. And I remember literally the coach said to me really clearly, the coach said, did you know in the medical field that 5 extra minutes with the patient can have such a huge impact, as well as impact on lawsuits? I was like, 5 minutes? Yeah. And at that point, I learned that I got to be a little more empathetic. I'll be a little more intentional so I can make a greater impact as a leader. It's a growing experience for me. Again, 15 years of leadership. But I continue to grow, because what I realize is the more effective I become as a leader, the more impact I can make in the lives of others. And so as we get ready to close, it's 2:31. As we get ready to close, I first and foremost want to thank you all so much for this opportunity to be with you today. I also encourage you, if you'd like to connect on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, my information is right there on the screen. Again, as I stated earlier, this is your time to make an impact in the world. And if you're going to do it, number one, you got to have a legacy mindset. Number two, you got to be grounded with courageous love. Number three, you got to be culturally intelligent. And number four, you got to not only identify the right leadership qualities, but you got to develop and implement them as well.